Mind over matter, overcompensating, overstatements, crookedness relating, the soul's churn in return, mental overstimulation, one word, riveting, it tethers my pilot. Streams that are promised to make seeking less.
How are you?
Greetings, Steve. Greetings.
Hold on, sorry, give me 1 sec. Oh, give me just 1 second.
No worries. Take your time.
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. I can hear you.
Right on. How goes it?
Not bad, man. Not bad. Feeling good, positive.
Awesome.
Great to have you on, man. Thanks for giving me some of your time.
For sure.
Yeah. Welcome to Poultry Journal podcast, Steve.
Yeah, good to be on. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Steve Westfall, the AI guru, as as you eloquently put it. I like that, by the way.
It's a crazy world with AI and with like everything that's going on. It's fun to play in, but it's changing really, really quick.
Yeah, man. Yeah, definitely one we're gonna speak more into. And you own a platform. It sounds like almost like a betting prediction platform of sorts.
I do. So the website that I have is called leans.ai. And what we do is we're primarily focused on American sports right now. We've got an algorithm that we call RIMI, and RIMI crunches thousands and thousands, millions of data points on all of the games that are going on, and makes predictions on how teams are likely to perform or how they're likely to trend. And then we kick those out to subscribers who want access to it.
That's really cool, man. How long have you been running this platform? How long has it been going on?
Yeah, so we started in 2021. So we just hit our 2-year anniversary right now. We've been doing a bunch of development before then on the algorithm.
Yeah.
We're a couple years in. It's fun. It's really fun.
That's good. That's good. Okay, let me just I'll just read something. As you know, it's the art platform, and then I want to get back to the conversation. The conflict grows with prominence. The dormant threatens to infect the dominant. The changing makes strict the smile on my face like a ventriloquist with the expression. The words tries to shout, but the universe would not allow them to come out. So I find the other matters to convert their expressions. Words, space, matter are like translation for the times I fail to fathom. They hang to the cotton like a dirty bottom, but I throw words at the problem, but I fail to take stick like skin on Saturn. Amused with the smooth, determined to not let the screws loose, dropping clues to remember the journey from whence I came.
Right on.
This is my little output for today.
Very good.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Okay. I wanted to inquire about your situation pertaining to, you mentioned scamming.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, there's there's the market segment that I'm in is called sports handicapping. So it's essentially it's very similar to a handicap in golf, where you're just weighting kind of a handicap score to make the matches more evenly. So sports handicapping historically has just been full of scamsters and frauds, and they're not very good at predicting the outcome of games, but they'll tell you they are, and so they lie about their record. They lie about how good they are. They make all kinds of false promises.
Yeah.
And that's actually how I got into it. Is I was scammed thousands and thousands of dollars by just a dishonest sports handicapper, and I was like, I can do this better. I can make a better algorithm. I can predict games better. I can be honest about what my algorithm does.
Yes.
So I'm trying to change kind of the view on the sports handicapping market, but it's yeah, it's a challenge because it's fraught with people who are just scamsters who charge a ton of money to get their sports picks, and then they're not very good.
Okay. Okay. Oh, that's very peculiar, that one. Is it a common thing for people just get scammed like that, or is there a certain trait or like an Achilles heel in a sense that certain people like that look for
Yeah,
to kind of
that's
victimize?
that's a good question. I think that the market's not very well regulated, and so anybody can just jump into it and say, "Oh, I'm gonna make predictions and I'm gonna charge you for them." And if they have really good advertising,
Yeah.
then I think there's a lot of people that can fall victim into that, into kind of their web.
Yeah.
And I, yeah, I think at some point like this, especially the ones I've been a part of, they just cast a really wide net and they just wait for the handful of people to come in who are interested in what they're offering and believe their claims, even though they're not true.
Yeah.
And then they just take your money. I mean, it's not too dissimilar to, scams with like crypto or anything like that, where it doesn't have to fool everybody, but it just has to fool enough people to where they can, I hate to say make a living, but to where they can, get what they want out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's. Oh yeah. I also wanted to ask: is there like the same question, but is there like a psychological um advantage or like insight into what they look for as well in terms of like scamming people and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. The one that I fell victim to, they were certainly keen to using like high pressure sales tactics. Uh, they were freaking good salesmen. Like they would, they would call me. There was always things were always expiring. There was always only like one spot left. It
Yes.
expired at midnight. If you don't get in now, you're going to miss out. Here's what all the other people who have used this service have made off of sports betting, and you don't want to miss out. I mean, it was very, very manipulative.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, they're just keen to just, play with people's emotions and kind of feel out what they're willing to go for and not.
Yeah.
And, drive the scam from there.
That's interesting. So what brought you into this field in the first place? Are you are you a sports fanatic of sorts, or you've kind of been in sports yourself, a history of participating in sports?
Yes, I've been a sports fan for a while, and I've been fascinated with predictive analytics. And so I love predicting elections and like writing algorithms that will look at polls and look at biases in polls and try to figure out how an election is likely to trend. It's amazing how predictable human behavior is, especially in the confines of something with rules. So you think about a sport, you've got a defined boundary to the field of the court.
Yeah.
You've got officials who are enforcing the rules. You've got a clock in most sports. You've got things that can and can't be done, and then you just repeat that over and over and over and over. And so I've been fascinated with how repeatable, human behavior is, and how if something has happened before, it's likely to happen again. And so, and I also have a background in software development, and so I started coding, a decade ago probably, and kind of combined the two fields together in the last couple of years into what's kind of started off as a fun thing, and now it's grown into a really primary source of income for me.
That's interesting. That's interesting. There was something I was thinking about. I really wanted to ask. Yes, to what you just said, it's almost like the way I see it is interesting, because the way you describe, how the variables are almost controlled. When I think of sportsmen and their lifestyle, or even just their operation pertaining to, like, say, just being on a pitch or whatever the sport may be, I know for a fact that sports people are so student of routine. It's almost like the rat that always does the same thing every day. He gets up and he practices just doing that same thing even better and better and better and better. And so it just kind of speaks to what you're saying in terms of like the predictive element, and just being able to kind of almost see it coming.
Yeah, that's really good, and I think it applies to within a game, right? Because in certain scenarios within a game, they're likely, people are likely to act how they have acted before. And if someone does really good under pressure, there's a chance they're going to do good under pressure again. And if someone crumbles under pressure, there's a chance they're going to crumble under pressure.
Yeah.
And it's, at the end of the day too, one of the other things I've found is I don't focus on players as much as I do team dynamics.
Yeah.
And I found that, you can have players, like sometimes you'll have a player have a really good game, and sometimes they'll have a terrible game. And that's just part of it. But if you look at team dynamics, a lot of times that tends to average out.
Yeah.
And so even if one guy has a bad game, somebody else might have a good game, and how the team forms tends to be consistent how the teams performed before. And so it's fascinating how people tend to act the same in future, and because of the predictions.
I think that's probably the genius of the whole thing. When you talk about predicting, it's not necessarily so much the big picture, it's more the small little things, the little trinkets in between. Like, for example, this player, you remember from the last game last week, he tweaked his ankle or something like that. And or like they come on the pitch or on the field and he's walking with a limp. Now, most people don't really take notice of certain things like that. I would say more like the opposition, or like, the teammates probably would be more aware. But I would imagine someone in your position would kind of pay attention to the little trinkets that most people would probably miss or neglect to see.
Yeah, exactly. One of the interesting things, like basketball is a good analogy. When you think about somebody making an assist, the assist is a two-way play. So the person passes the ball, but then somebody else is on the other end receiving it.
Yeah,
and it speaks to the overall efficiency of the team. And so if you take somebody out of the lineup that is really high in assists or making assists, not only do they come out, but every other person who's on the receiving end of those assists is also going to be affected because they're not in the game. So the overall team efficiency can drop. Same thing in American football with a quarterback. If the quarterback's injured, every single person on the offense, especially the receivers, are all going to be affected. And so keying in on which players are performing at their best and which players are not performing at their best, and how that ripples throughout the rest of the team is certainly something that we're looking at.
That's very interesting. Um, one of the biggest things I really want to cover is how I would say, how does human behavior correlates with AI?
That is, that's a really good question. One of the things that is fascinating about AI is if you dive into kind of a layer below, like AI is a buzz term, but underneath that, a lot of what's happening is models that are called neural networks. And there's all kinds of different types of neural networks. There's deep neural networks, convolutional neural networks. There's all different flavors of it. And
Yeah.
so the neural networks themselves are actually modeled on the neurons of the brain. And the idea is that you have nodes throughout the entire network that all have little pieces of information, and how those nodes react with other nodes creates results that sometimes are non-intuitive if you're not pumping it through like an AI type of model.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the most fascinating thing that we've seen with AI,
Yeah.
is that you can create results that are non-intuitive or that don't make sense, but the outcome of them, it ends up making sense once you see them. It's like, oh yeah, I never would have come up with that on my own.
Yeah.
But now that I look at the result, I can totally see how that would make sense. And it's kind of like using a computer as a different way of thinking about problems. And sometimes the results are bogus too. Like I've played with Chat GPT and some of those type of models, and you can ask it a question, and sometimes it will spit out like 80% total garbage and 10% fact or 20% fact. And that's the same with anything. Like you're never going to have a perfect AI model.
Yeah.
And the goal is to train them better and better and better to where they are more representative of reality and of facts. But yeah, I think to circle back, it's a totally different, strange way to think about problems than a human might.
Yeah.
And one of the big differentiators too is it can have a near infinite amount of knowledge. So as humans, we have what we've learned and what we remember.
Yes.
And sometimes we'll learn something and then forget it, and it's not saying maybe subconsciously we use that in our assessment of a problem, and maybe we don't.
Yeah.
But AI models can have vast amounts of information and start to pull it together in ways that human minds are just limited in their ability to do.
Do you think it's more so in that sense, is it more the level of a logical ability that they bring to a certain situation is, just based on the amount of memory and all these kind of small little traits, what would be like a human trait, it just kind of almost plateau them on a different scale in terms of like the abilities and being able to kind of outthink a person in a sense.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that the logic ability is definitely less than humans, but I think the information that they can pull on quickly is vastly more, and that sometimes can outweigh the equation. You think about like driving cars, for instance. They're good, but they're also they're being banned in certain cities because they have issues. And it's either software bugs or they don't have enough data coming in from the sensors to be able to fully analyze a situation, or they see something that they've never seen before or were never trained on. And as humans, I feel like we develop pretty good intuition over time to where we can be thrown into a situation we've never seen before, and we can have a pretty good idea of how to act. In an AI model, depending on how different the situation is, sometimes you can get totally undefined behavior. And from a safety perspective, especially in like cars or something, there's a ton of work that's put into like confining safety actions. But even going down that road, sometimes it's better to act and sometimes it's better not to act.
Yeah.
I'm pulling up to an intersection and there's a truck screaming through, and if I'm in the way, sometimes it's better to speed forward and get out of the way.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff, trying to convey into an AI model and get it to logic through, I think it's really challenging. And so there's a long road ahead in some fields like that.
Yeah.
But some of the historical information and like being able to conversate on a historical figure, for instance, and talk about somebody's life in a
Yes.
coherent way, we're making really good strides in that in the AI field. And I think that just the wealth of information that it's able to pull on sometimes can create better outcome than the deprecated logicking ability of these models.
Okay. What makes a bad AI, or and also like limitations to AI in a sense?
Yeah, great question. Bad data makes a bad AI. So any kind of bugs in the data, or one of the things that's fascinating about sports is it's like a lot of times, especially in sports betting, like people only care about the final score of the game.
Yes.
But what happens to get to that final score of the game sometimes can be so variable. Like a quarterback being injured or something can have a huge effect in the outcome of the score of the game, and that's kind of like a subliminal variable to what sports bettors are looking at. So bad data is definitely one, and then like not putting data in the right context, I think, is another huge error. And it obviously, the flip side of that is to have a good AI model, you have to put data into context. But to put data into good context, you also have to have a ton of things around the data point that you're looking at to be able for the model to make good inferences of. And that's why these AI models are just data hungry. I mean, they're just starving for massive amounts of data from anything they can pull. And a lot of it is finding key types of data and then putting them into good relevant context with things around them, to just see what's worth listening to and what's worth ignoring in a specific scenario. Beyond that, I think just limitations of the technology as well. I mean, if you think about AI really started, these models word AI really started to come onto the scene in like the last 5 years. And it was really, I feel like, with Chat GPT about a year ago now is when it started to kind of become mainstream. So AI in general is just, it's in its infancy in kind of the maturity of it. 1900, where it was a steam engine on a wagon, basically. And we've come a long way since then. And so I think it will continue to get better over time. But some of that's going to just be more resources being put into development, and also having good legislative and governmental bounds on what we should and should not be using AI for, because I think that's one of the most challenging issues facing both legislators and the AI industry right now.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds to me though like data is almost like God for AI. Would you say it's almost like when you just to try and make a mad scientist comparison? So you have AI data as opposed to human and experience. Is that a fair comparison in a sense?
I think so. I think that's pretty close. Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to see you keep going on that train of thought.
Yeah. So, you know, if you think about a machine or AI, as we were speaking about, to make a prediction or to kind of create a schematic in a sense, to kind of see or just be aware, self-awareness in its essence. Um, and I think about experience for a human, for just speaking on a human alone, experience, that's information for us. That's anticipation. That is awareness. That is almost how a blind person would actually just walk out in the road and knowing what to do or how.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's so many different things when it comes to information and just understanding pertaining to next to experience. And I kind of see that kind of likelihood on the other side of the spectrum when you think about a machine and AI, and just over the years how some of the things that we've kind of seen that people have created to kind of almost um, shed light or show where the direction that something like an AI was heading into, and just the way they kind of perceive the world through data, from just absorbing data and just trying to understand human beings. um it's very interesting. It's very interesting, but at the same time, I would say between the two, it's almost like if you have it's almost like there's a difference if you could compare a man and a woman. It's almost that type of comparison where we're quite similar, but not quite the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really good. The blind person analogy is really interesting because your AI models are limited by the amount of data coming into them,
Mm,
and a blind person trying to perceive the world, they're limited by not having one of the five senses.
yeah,
And but like you said, they are able to still function, and a lot of times the other four senses will become vastly more enhanced without the fifth, and they'll be able to hear things that no one else can hear, and like perceive maybe changes in the environment in ways that other people can't.
yeah.
And I haven't even thought about that in the context of AI yet, because it's just a black box at some levels. Like we have people ask us all the time. They're like, well, why did your algorithm come up with this certain pick on this certain game? And it's like, that's a great question. We don't know. We're trying to figure it out too.
Yeah.
But what we can say is we feel good about the data going in. We feel good about the health of the algorithm, and there's no major errors being reported right now. And
Mm,
so we're almost on a journey ourselves with our subscribers,
yeah.
trying to see, like, what is this thing going to come up with, and does it make sense or not.
Mm. Where does the potential for emotions fit into all this?
Okay, that's a great that's actually one of our big selling pieces.
Really?
Is we have taken emotion out of sports predictions. So
Okay.
our biggest competitors are human sports handicappers, or humans that look at games and look at teams and try to make predictions on how a game's going to trend.
Mm,
And the problem with humans is they're biased, and they do have emotion. And even if they try not to be biased, they're going to be biased by something, whether it's loyalty to a team or some limited confined experience that they've seen in the past that they're applying.
yeah.
Maybe it should be applied and maybe it shouldn't. All kinds of different biases that are some are certainly bigger than others. and those end up adding up to inconsistencies. And one of our big selling pitches is to just say we've taken human emotion out of making sports predictions. We've handed it entirely over to an algorithm. And what we've seen is you tend to get a lot more consistency. And then over time, that consistency tends to result to a better product, because sometimes biases can help for a little while, and someone can feel a way towards a team and it works for a little while. And sometimes they can hurt just as bad or worse. And so I think we've created much more of a consistent product just by taking human emotion totally out of the equation.
That's interesting. I say that to say I'm going to try and connect it now. I see emotion just off the conversation that we're having now. It's like a double-headed sword. And I say that because pertaining to what we're speaking about, which is pretty much so logical, it's a numbers game. But on the other side, when you think about an artist, emotions is something that you're able to utilize, and you're able to make it work for you. So I think you know where I'm going with this. So when you think about an artist, an AI kind of almost run a predictive, like creating certain things just off people's traits from data that they've gathered per se from about somebody. We've seen where rappers, AI rappers, etc. these days. Could you speak some more about that? Like, how does that come about where AI can kind of rap and all kind of stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. One of the so I'm thinking firstly about like AI art generation and AI picture generation. And one I didn't even think about it until you just said this, but AI is pulling on data of previous sources coming in. But if some of those sources are human-based sources, then they're going to be fraught with emotion. So for instance, if it's looking like watercolors or any kind of like artwork that's been painted by somebody, that's going to have the artist's emotions all over it. And AI, even though it's not going to have its own emotions, it's going to be leveraging all of those emotions that have come from that artist. And then it's going to do that from that painting and another painting and another painting. And so in a sense, it's going to be conglomerating tons of emotions from tons of human sources into a single output. Now, whether the result of that is good or bad, I think is up to the consumer. Some AI work is amazing, and some of it's total garbage. And I think that kind of depends on how it's weighting some of these things together. Is it listening to similar emotional tones from all of these sources and putting it into an output piece, or is it getting conflicting emotions to where it's just creating kind of garbled junk on the output? But yeah, when it's listening to human sources, those human sources are going to be full of emotion, and that at some point is going to trickle through into the result.
That's fascinating, man. That's fascinating. And I'm just thinking about again. I would imagine it's so tricky to kind of predict this one, but to begin, I would imagine it has to be a thing where firstly you have to have the big enough memory, don't you, to kind of almost display so many different traits, because it's almost like you're creating a universe with so much emotions from different artists, etc., and then to almost unravel the potential of those emotions. Like that's to me, that's like, oh man, it's massive. When I think about it, it's just like, it's almost like they say about how many, sand, there's more universe, there's more planets, there's more this, that, than more sand that you see on the sea. Like it's just
It's crazy.
It's on that level. That's crazy. And so it just speaks to art in itself, and the potential for greatness, or to take it to so many heights that probably, even if it's by AI, we probably haven't seen yet, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It'll only get better over time. That's one of the way our model learns is it's called reinforcement machine learning, and it's looking at what it's generated in the past and saying, was that a good result or was that a bad result? And then it's feeding that back into every future prediction that it's making.
Okay.
And so it's designed to just get better and better over time.
So innovation is a big part of AI.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being able to adapt, it's and grow and almost expand as a person, over the years, from a baby to a grown man. Like, I would imagine that's kind of like the essence of an AI over time, to almost keep building.
It is. I mean, you're essentially creating a person. I use that. I hate using that term because that's not what it is. It's an algorithm that's running on defined data, and at the end of the day, the buzzword of AI, I think, has a lot more connotations than it should probably.
Yeah.
Some of the results are staggering, but at the end of the day, it's just an algorithm that's running. So yeah, I hate saying making it a person, but in a sense, it is. It's similar in that it's just learning from its experiences and trying to become better over time.
I mean, that pretty much for me encapsulates what a person is, because let's be real, none of us are perfect.
Yep.
And it sounds to me like the AI is always trying to get better.
It is.
The hunger for data,
Yep. Yeah, it's very similar. That's a really good way to look at it. And it'll never be perfect either, but it's on a journey just like we are of trying to learn from our mistakes and see where we screwed up and see what we did well and feed that back into our own lives as we go forward.
Man, that's beautiful, man. That's beautiful. I mean, just speaking about it and just like when I just put it together in my head from what you're saying, it's just like it sounds to me like art. Do you get what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, it is. Yeah, I could see that because there's just a lot of abstract pieces about AI that don't really make sense, and there's a lot of abstract pieces about art that make it beautiful.
Yeah, it's just it's massive, man. Like the potential for it and how the level is operating at already. Like it's mind blowing.
It is. It for sure is.
Yeah, just interpreting the information that we're speaking about. Who knows?
It's going to be a different world in 10 years. I guarantee it's going to be a different world in 1 year.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that, man. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Listen, Steve, I want to thank you, man.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I really enjoyed this
conversation. Having me on.
Very interesting, man. Very interesting.
It's a crazy sandbox to play in, but I really appreciate you having me on. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for giving me some of your time, and we'll definitely keep in touch.
Awesome.
Nice to have you again to kind of speak about AI. We kind of try and attack it from a different, because this thing is always growing, so there's so much to speak.
Yeah.
But Steve,
absolutely.
Until we speak again.
Great. Have a good one. We'll see you later.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Mind over matter, overcompensating, overstatements, crookedness relating, the soul's churn in return. Mental overstimulation, one word, riveting, it terrors my pilot. Streams that are promised to make seeking less.